Hello everyone and welcome back to the Retro Recall. I hope you're doing awesome. Before the days of VMware, Oracle VirtualBox, Hyper-V platforms, which allow you to emulate various desktop environments on current hardware in your own environment, we had Microsoft Virtual PC. This particular software is new old stock, sealed box, big box software, love it, from 2004. And we're going to go over a little history of this software. We're going to open it up, find out what came with, install it, and try it out on a good old Windows XP machine. So you know what? We have a lot to do. Let's get right to it. And welcome back. So Microsoft Virtual PC was not always known as that, this particular software. This was based on Connectix, which was manufactured in 1997. Microsoft had merged or acquired that particular company in 2003 and manufactured it under the Microsoft branding under Microsoft Virtual PC. So this particular software, of course, only lasted a couple of years, so it's nice to have an actual box copy of it, as in 2006, it became free. By the time of manufacturing, this was 129 US dollars, which roughly equates to 221 US dollars today based on inflation. Unfortunately, this was discontinued in 2011 due to the fact that other manufacturers came out with similar software and Microsoft had given up continuing to manufacture and support this. So let's go ahead and open it up and find out exactly what we have in box. So let's see if I can try not to cut myself this time, as I have done more than once on this channel with this wonderful knife. Generally, I don't like opening up the software. I like to keep my stuff sealed, but I figured, we would continue to let everyone enjoy what this was all about back in the day. And we'll go ahead and remove that plastic wrap. We have a little bit of damage to the box, which you didn't quite see when the shrink wrap was on, but that's totally fine. So we have designed for Microsoft Windows XP and 2000, Microsoft logo, and it shows a desktop with multiple environments. Look at that older LCD screen. So we have a couple desktop speakers, good old Microsoft, of course, branded peripherals. So Microsoft Virtual PC runs multiple operating systems simultaneously on one PC. And I remember back in the day trying various types of software to do that, and having a platform such as this to be able to do that is just absolutely awesome, especially as things were moving forward and I had various pieces of software that would not run on, say, Windows XP, run on older hardware and older software. You can specify all of that in these types of environments. These sort of platforms is what paved the way to what we have today. We have a bunch of good old advertising. Nothing like going into a store, picking up a piece of box software, and spending time in the store reading over what you are about to buy. So Microsoft Virtual PC runs multiple PC-based operating systems simultaneously on one workstation, providing a safety net to maintain compatibility with legacy applications while you migrate to a new operating system. It also saves reconfiguration time, so your support, development, and training staff can work more efficiently. So it gives you all the different things here. You can see Virtual PC emulates complete hardware systems, so multiple x86 guest operating systems, licensed separately of course, can run simultaneously in separate virtual machines on a single Windows Microsoft XP Professional or Windows 2000 Professional base PC. Microsoft Virtual PC Console displays all guest operating systems that are installed under this, so you can have multiple environments. Go ahead and click on it and run it and be able to utilize that within the XP environment. So you can see in this particular case, they're running Windows 98 as well as Windows NT simultaneously running on Windows XP. But of course, in order to do that, you had to have a machine quick enough to be able to utilize these environments. Because obviously it requires, processing power, hard drive space, RAM, etc. to be able to do this. Virtual PC allows multiple guest operating systems to be installed within virtual machines on top of Windows XP Professional or Windows 2000 Professional as the host operating system. So ease migration challenges, do more in less time, and accelerate multi-environment development. So they're talking about all the different usages you can have of the software. So to determine the minimum physical memory requirements for Microsoft Virtual PC, refer to the table below. So it talks about the various operating systems. It tells you about the memory. So Microsoft DOS requires 32 megabytes of memory on your computer because obviously it still has to run the Windows XP environment and still be able to run the environment it's requesting. 50 megabytes of hard disk space. Windows 95 requires 32 megs, 500 megs, all the way down to, if we're using Windows XP Professional, so if you want to install basically Windows XP Professional in your Windows XP Professional environment, you need 128 megs of RAM and 2 gigabytes of hard disk space. Impressive. Example, so to run Windows 95 as a guest operating system on a Windows 2000 professional based host, you need a minimum of 128 megabytes, so 32 megabytes plus 96 megabytes of RAM. So they're telling you what you need in order to support that, and 500 megabytes of hard disk space. And if you want to run 98 and Windows 2000 on a Windows XP Professional host, so you have the Windows XP installed, you decide to run two environments, you'll need 64 plus 96 plus 128. So this table allows you to add them up, tell you how much memory you'll require in the system. Plus, in terms of hard disk space, this would require 2.5 gigabytes of hard disk space. Additional memory that exceeds the minimum amount generally improves performance. As we know, it'll always give you the minimum requirements, but also call out if you want the environment to run even smoother, you'll go ahead and do that. That gives you a whole bunch of information, tells you about the system requirements of the actual software to install. Okay, so enough yapping. I wanted to kind of walk everyone through what you'd be doing in the aisle as you're sitting there reading all the different features and what it can do, and basically understand if you're going to take it home or not. Let's open up the box, take a look inside, and see what we get. So it looks like we have a manual and the software. First thing I'll do is take out the manual. And I really love when the software came with these printed documentation versus saying, hey, load up the CD, you've got to look on inside or online. There's just something about having the nostalgic feel from this. So getting started, client-based virtual machine solution, Microsoft Virtual PC. So here comes all the instructions, how to install the actual software, using it for the first time, installing virtual machines, creating your custom settings, what operating system you plan on installing. We're going to walk through all of that today in this video, so we're going to get to experience a lot of this, and it's just really good that it comes with all the basically step-by-step instructions on how to install it. Gives you a bunch of troubleshooting information, all the different shortcut keys, so if you want to basically do keyboard shortcuts to be able to run everything, as well as it gives us essentially the same stuff it gave us on the box, telling you what your minimum requirements were, and it gives you the math on how, if you want to support multiple environments, to add up the memory as it did on the box. So it's nice to see that. Beautiful Microsoft blue, all in perfect condition. So the next thing we have is the software, and I really love that the software comes in a DVD case. So Microsoft Virtual PC runs multiple operating systems simultaneously on one PC, version 2004. And I mentioned manufactured in 2003 earlier. This is version 2004, but it was manufactured in 2003. Opening up the box, we have an end user license agreement, which of course we're going to take and read and submit and warranty, and it has all the different holographic material on it to let you know that this is authentic Microsoft software. So we do have the software here. We have 2003 Microsoft version 2004, and we have the Microsoft Virtual PC. All right, so that's all the box comes with. So not very exciting in terms of what it comes with, but that's only part of the journey. I mean, big box software is always exciting. I mean, considering, today you buy a USB stick or a license key and that's it. You install it and you're good to go. There's none of this stuff. It's really nice sitting here 21 years later and enjoying what this would have been like back in the day. All right, let's get the bench all set up with the system that we're going to be utilizing today to install this software. Okay, everyone, here we are back on the bench, all set up with our Windows XP custom desktop system. Now, I've already done an in-depth video of this computer, complete tour, testing everything, and another video right there. If you haven't seen it, please check it out. Pretty awesome. This particular system, I believe, was built in 2008 and still going today. And the reason I picked this particular computer is, well, essentially the hardware, where it's in 2008 running Core 2 Duo, 2.66 gigahertz, as well as 3 gigabytes of memory installed, dedicated graphics, etc., etc. It gives us all the hardware required for us to be able to test out various environments on this system. And, back in the day, if it was in 2008, for example, and you were installing Windows Virtual PC, you may have a need for it at this stage. You're running Windows XP in this environment, and for example, it's 2008 and you need to run something from Windows 98, for example. So you'd be able to install this and test out on this hardware because of all the legacy ports, because of the ability to run multiple operating systems using this software, because the hardware can support it for sure in terms of resources, but also because of the ports I mentioned a moment ago, you can also run the legacy hardware as well. Okay, so we have the software in hand and we're going to install it on the computer. Okay, welcome to the Install Shield Wizard for Microsoft Virtual PC 2004. Install Shield Wizard will install Microsoft Virtual PC. Click Next to continue. We're going to click on Install, and here we are installing the software. Created a desktop icon for us, so we have Microsoft Virtual PC. We're going to double click that and take a look at the environment. So it says here, welcome to the new Virtual Machine Wizard. The wizard helps you create and configure a new virtual machine or add an existing virtual machine to the Virtual PC console. The virtual machine configuration is stored in a VMC file. To continue, click on Next. We'll go ahead and do that. So what do you want to do? We want to either create a virtual machine, use default settings to create a virtual machine, or add an existing virtual machine. So if you had say you had a VMC file from another system, so say you had an existing VMC file elsewhere on another PC already set up in a different environment, we're going to add it to this computer and utilize it on this particular hardware and or system. So, we want to go ahead and create a virtual machine from scratch. So this option guides you through the basic configurations necessary for creating a new virtual machine. So we'll hit Next. So it says here, virtual machine name and location. The name you specify will appear in the list of virtual machines. So in this particular case, I want to create Windows 98. Okay, we're going to click on Next. And it says operating system. Well, it detected Windows 98 as soon as I typed it in, which is great. But in the drop-down menu, it gives us options for MS-DOS, 95, 98, ME, our favorite operating system. I wonder how many dislikes and unsubscribes I'll get for saying that. Windows NT, Workstation, Windows 2000, Windows XP, OS2. Plus we install some server environments as well as other. So other will allow us to obviously install other operating systems. But for the sake of the video today, we're going to be doing Windows 98. So it says here, to improve performance, this virtual machine can run more applications on its operating system. Increase the amount of RAM allocated to it. To leave more RAM for other virtual machines on your system, use the recommended RAM allocation. So it says recommended for Windows 98 is 64 megabytes of RAM, and that's fine, but you can go in and adjust the RAM. Now, as I mentioned earlier, we have 3 gigabytes of memory. Now keep in mind that 3 gigabytes of memory is supporting this entire environment. So everything that I would be running normally, plus any virtual machines that I would run, plus what's shared. Now, given the age of the operating system with only 64 megabytes of memory, I'm not too worried about bumping that up a little bit. So I'm just going to type in instead of dragging the bar of 128 megabytes of RAM. I'm going to click on Next. Now it says virtual hard disk options. Virtual hard disk is a .bhd file. So anybody with these types of environments start to see and recognize these terms. That is stored on your physical hard disk and is used to contain guest operating system applications and data files. So keep in mind, they'll interchange host and guest. So this is the host environment, the Windows XP, but we're talking about installing a guest operating system, which will live on this machine. But again, it's a guest. It's only kind of visiting. So this virtual hard disk you create or select for your virtual machine is called hard disk 1 in settings and is the startup disk. So we want an existing hard disk or a new hard disk. So we're going to create a new virtual hard disk and hit Next. Now it tells you where it is. It tells you where it's stored in the virtual machines, Windows 98, and it's calling it Windows 98 hard disk.vhd. Now, of course, you can rename that, change it, etc., but this is the default location, which we will allow it to create. Click on Next. Now it says completing the new virtual machine wizard. So it says you've successfully completed the new virtual machine wizard. Your virtual machine will be created with the following attributes: Windows 98, 128 megabytes of memory, and it tells you where your virtual hard disk is. We'll click on Finish. Okay, so we have our virtual PC console all ready to go with Windows 98. It says it's not running. We're going to click on Settings, and here we are. So we have our file name as Windows 98, and again, because we have it called that, plus we have it saved on the machine such as that. We have file name Windows 98, memory is 128 megabytes of memory, which we configured. We have a hard disk, one of Windows 98 hard disk, but we can actually go in and create other hard disks if we wanted to. The environment lets you seamlessly emulate other different types of hardware within the system. CD, DVD drive, so secondary controller. So we are with little check marks here for attaching the existing optical drive of the system. So the environment, basically the virtual environment, will share that hardware with the host computer. So floppy disk is auto-detected. Now this PC actually does have a physical hard disk, a physical floppy disk, which is great. But if you had, say, a GoTech or something like that in a new environment, you could potentially do that as well. So COM1 is none, but you can say, hey, you know what? I'm going to be testing physical hardware, or for whatever reason, I'll be connecting a modem to this computer because I want to do some testing in Windows 98 with an external modem. You can actually go in and select what the COM port can be and utilize the physical serial port for this particular system. And that's the nice thing about virtual environments. You're able to test out legacy hardware on existing systems. Okay, COM2, we have the ability to do the same thing. So same thing for the parallel port if I wanted to select that and use the hardware. Now we won't be using that today, so I'm not too worried. Networking, we do have the network adapter. We have one, it's installed. We don't have a physical connection plugged into this computer as of the moment. It's not connected to my network. But if we wanted to and give networking to Windows 98, we could. It would just utilize that. Sound is enabled. We're just utilizing the sound which is installed in this system. So it's emulating it through the existing hardware. So we can install a shared folder. Now, in this particular case, we can do it after the virtual machine's been installed. So once it gets everything configured, you're able to drop and drag files basically from the Windows XP environment into the Windows 98 environment, which is very handy. Under display, we have always start the virtual machine in a full screen mode. I don't want that. I want to run that in a smaller mode, especially if you have multiple windows you want to switch between. And it tells you what resolution to use. Hide virtual machine menu bar and hide virtual machine status bar. We're going to leave them active. Under close, show message. Show message with options at close. So we have a save state, shut down, and turn off. Or we can go ahead and say we're automatically going to force one of those. But we'll give the option to the user, which is us. Okay, Windows 98, let's click on Start and see what happens. So it says here, auto-detecting, it says reboot and proper boot device. So it says insert boot media in selected boot device. So we have the Windows 98 media installed, and we have the Windows 98 boot disk currently in the system. As you can see, it is currently reading, well, you can't see off screen here, but it is reading the floppy disk, and here we are starting Windows 98. So I've gone ahead and formatted the hard disk. Of course, I did not specify the hard disk size, and that was my bad. I had to do an F disk, of course, and prepare the drive, typical Windows 98 installation stuff. And as a result, of course, it automatically defaulted to a 16 gigabyte drive in Windows 98. Welcome to virtualization. And in this particular case, because I am using a virtual environment, I can, once this has been turned off, I can go into settings underneath the hard disk itself, under Virtual Disk Wizard when it's not running, and adjust that partition size if I wanted to, prior to installation, of course. Okay, we're gonna click on exit, and it's done the scan, and here we are installing Windows 98. So as far as the software is concerned, we literally have Windows 98 hardware on this system. That's how it's built, that's how it's configured. Okay, we've gotten through the whole F-disk stuff, the virtual hard disk stuff. We have a 16 gigabyte drive configured and formatted and all good to go for Windows 98. So we've reached the point of the setup for the Windows product key. If you notice, my mouse is actually locked within this environment. So this is the virtual environment I'm running within the Windows XP, but hey, maybe I want to go back to the Windows XP host and utilize it instead of using the guest environment. Well, to do that, I looked up in the manual, this particular software default to the right Alt key. So when I click on that, you'll notice a secondary mouse is now populated, and now I can utilize the environment. I can go into anywhere I want within the Windows XP environment, or click back in the window, and it automatically allows me to recontrol the environment. The nice thing about the virtual environment is I don't need to wait for this to install. I know normally I was going to install it, get it running, install a different operating system to show multi-environments running, but as you can see, this is installing Windows 98. Well, there's nothing stopping us from installing a secondary virtual environment or even a third one while we're here. So while it's running, I'm going to click on New, and we're going to create a new virtual machine again. So click on New Virtual Machine, and this time we're going to install Windows ME or Millennium Edition. Hit Next. It already detected that that's what I typed in. Hit Next. Use recommended amount of RAM, so it's recommending 96 megabytes, and of course it tells you you can adjust the RAM to whatever you want. Well, in this particular case, I'm going to go 256 megabytes of memory, and hit Next. And we're going to create a new virtual hard disk and click on Next. And this time, just like before, it's saying Windows ME hard disk. Remember, we're doing this while Windows 98 is installing in the background in the other virtual environment. So under settings, we can go in and we can take a look this time, and you can see we do have all the same hardware that, well, because it's the same host, right? The host computer's hardware stays the same and has lots of different hardware in terms of the hard disk and RAM and CPU to give to all. So that's fine. We're going to leave everything as default, and it defaults to 16 gigabytes of hard disk space. So we're going to click on Start, and we're going to see it says it's starting up. And now you can see already it's detected the hard disk, and it's saying, hey, I don't detect a boot disk. Okay, so I was just about to continue on and install Windows Millennium, but then I thought, well, why not do all three at the same time? So literally right in front of you, we have Windows 98 installing, which was our original installation, which we're continuing on. Then we have Windows Millennium installing as we speak at the same time as this is installing. And I said, heck, why not continue on and install Windows 2000 at the same time? So we have literally 3 virtual machines running and installing 3 different operating systems at the exact same time within their respective environments, sharing the hardware, all running on the Windows XP host environment. And I think that is absolutely awesome. I'm going to continue on while we install all 3 operating systems using Microsoft Virtual PC. Here we go. Okay, that was quite the install. We're talking about an hour's worth of time to get all 3 operating systems installed and configured, ready for the virtual machine or virtual PC software. So, I mean, we're going to go through them. As you can see, we have our virtual PC console. This is your main admin. This particular console is where you're going to go in and actually manage the different environments. You can see that they're currently running. If I was to, for example, pause the environment, I'm just going to move this down here for a moment because I'm going to be clicking in an environment. If I was to go into the actual environment and go pause for a minute, I want this virtual machine paused. I don't want anything else to happen in this environment at this time. It pauses it, and you can see in our console, it's paused it. Now, that said, I can even either control it via the window or go over and right click on this particular environment where it says Windows 98 running and click on resume. Now that's very handy if you're going to be testing some installation of different software. You want to come back to something, you don't want to miss something like a pop-up window or something that you're monitoring for. It really gives you the option to do that. So as you can see, on a Windows XP machine, we have, and keep in mind that's the host machine, we have 3 individual operating systems running at the exact same time. We have Windows 98, Windows Millennium Edition, and Windows 2000 Professional. Yes, it took some time to install, but I installed all 3 of them simultaneously. And through the magic of editing and jump cutting and all that stuff, you guys got to see the final result fairly quickly. Now, I'm going to click on Task Manager, and you can see currently under our performance, our CPU is barely doing anything. And we do have a dual core, Core 2 Duo installed currently. And currently we do have 2 gigabytes of memory available to the system still. That's even after 3 of the systems are running. Now, mind you, that said, these are not running a lot of stuff at the moment. You know, you start to click around, you start to move within the environment, you can see the CPU start to jump up a bit. That would be the same thing as if I was going to run different versions of software or things like that. Now, if, for example, I'm like, well, you know what, I want Windows 98 to be running, but I want to jump to Windows Millennium and do the same test as another piece of software. Well, if it's going to be any sort of resource intensive, depending on what your host PC is running, you can actually go in here and click on pause, and all of a sudden, you know, it's pausing the environment, and I can jump over to my Windows Millennium Edition, for example, and then do whatever I need to do within here. And as you can see, as I'm doing stuff within here, it runs fairly smoothly, and you can see the CPU jumps up a bit as I'm using it. And as you go ahead and utilize the memory within this, it starts to take away from the available memory. Because remember, as of the moment, and when I say available memory, I'm saying within the virtual PC, because we've taken this environment and specifically said, Windows Millennium, you only have 256 megabytes of memory. Play nice within that limitation. Now, what if, for example, I'm using those particular VM and I'm working within it and what have you, and I'm going, you know what, I'm really running into some limitations with this software, whether it's a piece of software I want to install within this environment, and I'm going, okay, well, you know what, I've gone in and I've seen I only have 256 megabytes of memory installed for my Windows Millennium Edition installation. I can go into Virtual PC, click on my Windows 98, go in and click on settings. From here, I'm able to give it more memory. Now, mind you, you can't do this while it's running, but I'm able to swap it or upgrade it or remove it as I want, you know, once it's been shut down, of course. And that allows me to be so flexible versus taking legitimate hardware or real hardware and swapping out memory modules and things like that. So this will allow me to do that. And that's the nice thing about a virtual machine or a virtual PC environment. I think it's absolutely fantastic. And the other thing I'll call out is one thing nice about the virtual environment is that 9 times out of 10, it will install all the drivers for you because it knows it's running in a different environment. You already have the drivers installed in the host PC. The virtual PC software comes with a set of drivers to install all the drivers per the environment. Now, the other thing that it does recommend that you do is within the environment to click on install or update virtual machine editions. Because what it does is it goes out, installs, well, it basically puts a virtual CD in there and installs additional extensions in the environment to basically ensure that everything is either more performance, of course, but of course to have the drivers required. So along the top in any virtual window that you're running, let's go ahead and resume this again. We're just going to click on that and boom, Windows 98 is running great again. So we're going to go under action. You see full screen mode. So if I want to go ahead, it just tells you what to do if you do this. So now I'm running Windows Millennium. This particular PC on the host is running Windows Millennium Edition. And I can go in and use this and do all my testing and do everything that I want within this computer, play some games, load up DOS, or well, actually Windows Millennium doesn't really have DOS mode, but go in here and do all these things and have a lot of good time and you know, all that. And that's great. You know, I can do that within this environment. But I'm going, okay, you know what? I'm done with Windows Millennium Edition. I've done exactly what I wanted. I hit Alt-Enter, and it brings me back to the original host PC showing my 3 environments. Now, most times you're not going to do this. Most times you're not going to have 3 environments running at the same time. So I'm going to go ahead and close this. There's a couple options you can do this. You can treat it like a regular PC and go to Start and Shut Down, and it will actually go ahead and shut down your PC. Click on Shut Down. I'm letting it do its thing. No different than if you were going ahead and running it on real hardware. Now, over Windows 98, we have the startup screen or the splash screen starting up here. And you can see that we have the exact same type of environment, except we only have 128 megabytes of memory. Under Device Manager, again, all the drivers are installed. It actually emulates a Sound Blaster 16, which is pretty awesome, considering that you can go in here and run your DOS mode, or I can shut down into DOS mode. So if you want to play real DOS mode, I can go in here and do whatever within DOS. And if I want to go back into Windows, I just type in Win, and it's going to bring me back into and load up the operating system for me, Windows 98. And so that's what's really awesome about this particular softwares, you're able to go in and emulate and utilize these various different types of software. And along the bottom of the window, you'll see like pictures of hardware here. So we have a hard disk, CD-ROM or optical drive, we have a floppy disk, we have folders for shared environment, we have a network type controller down the bottom here. This environment just kind of gives you an idea of what this is doing. So we have Windows 98, just like that, starting back up. And you know, if you wanted to play real mode DOS games, there we go. We have our virtual environment in a Windows XP host system. And I think that's pretty darn snazzy. So I'm gonna go ahead and close that as well. So again, I showed you on the different than the Windows Millennium Edition. I click on shutdown. If you remember before, we have the option under settings when we set up the virtual machine to specifically say to it, what do you want it to do? Do you want it to automatically close? Do you want it to, you know, give you the prompts? So in this particular case, I believe I set it to close. So continuing on here, we do still have Windows 2000 Professional running. And again, I'm just going to hit Alt Enter and you'll see that it's going to go to a full screen and I have a full working copy of Windows 2000 environment, no problem. I had all three running, and because we're running on such a good computer, and again, it gave this 512 megabytes of RAM because it's Windows 2000. I could even stand to give it more memory if needed, but between the three environments, I'm using less than a gigabyte of memory from the host PC. So the host PC is saying, okay, you know, I'm using 500 plus megabytes running Windows XP currently in my host environment. I'm giving the virtual machine just under 1 gigabyte of memory, and I still have 2 gigabytes to play with, whether it's within the actual environment or if I want to use it within the host PC, because whatever I'm doing over here, say if I'm testing a piece of software or maybe I'm installing a retro game or something like that within the application, I'm still able to go over here and I'm still able to use all the applications that are on my host PC without an issue, which is very, very handy. Now, the other thing I can do is, here's the environment, right? So what I was saying earlier is that I've gone down in both of those other environments, the Windows 98 and the Windows Millennium Edition, and clicked on Start and clicked on Shutdown. Well, I'm not going to do it this time. I'm going to go to Action and click on Close. So Close is, what do you want to do? Well, do I want to save the state? Do I want to shut down Windows 2000? Or do I want to turn off the VM or the virtual PC? And so in this particular case, I can click on Save State and hit OK. So right now it says it's saving, so it's saving this environment. And then if I go in and click on Start again, notice how it started right up where I was. So therefore, it's instant. You don't have to sit there and wait for it to boot or load within that, you know, virtual environment, which I think is so awesome to be able to do. Now, in this case, I'm going to go shut down again because I want to see it actually shut down. So then we can know all three are shutting down. And, you know, the nice thing about this, I have a lot of old software, a lot of retro stuff, a lot of different hardware. And, you know, I personally have the hardware as part of the retro recall. So I can actually load up hardware, era specific, and load all of this stuff when it comes to the software, when it comes to different devices and different things I show on the channel. I can actually do it using real hardware. Now, that said, if I didn't have that, and I wanted to load the virtual machine, I could. If I want to start up Windows 98, because for some reason I want to showcase an older modem, for example, or an old printer or something, I click on Start, and what it's doing is actually knows it's 128 megs of RAM, all the configuration settings are there, and boom, it's actually loading Windows 98. You can see it accessing the hard disk indicator here, and as it loads up the hardware, it will go to the host computer via the virtual PC and say, okay, here are the settings that I've been given. Here's all the hardware that I've been configured with. I'm going to load that environment back up. And it's loading it up fresh. This is like a fresh restart. Now, the nice thing about any of this is, as I mentioned earlier, I can save the state. I can pause the state. If I'm busy doing something and I don't want to dedicate the resources, you can see it's in mid startup right now. I can click on pause. Like, that's it. I'm going to minimize it and go, you know what? I don't have time for that right now. So I'm going to go and do whatever I want to do on my computer. I'm going to go play some games and do some stuff because I'm not patient or whatever. And then later on, I'm going, okay, you know what? I'm ready to play with the virtual PC again. So I'm going to go back to here and click on resume, and boom. It basically gives you full control over each individual virtual environment. And I just think it's absolutely fantastic that this software even exists, and it exists today, right? I mean, this was back in the day. It's even perfected now, much better for newer operating systems, much better for, even retro operating systems. And a lot of people say, how can I get into this particular activity and this hobby and be part of the retro community? Well, you can practice by getting the operating systems and walking through some help guides and doing it on even new hardware using the virtual environment. Whether you're using VMware or Oracle VirtualBox, you're able to go in and create. And most of these applications are very similar. It all starts with a wizard. You click on new and walks you through the installation of that particular operating system you're wanting to use. And the nice thing about it is this gives you lots of control over the hardware you want to use. But when it comes to the actual software, the actual environment, the newer software, you're actually able to select more options. So you're able to go in and configure this even more so, because as software progressed, it gave you a lot more options. So yeah, I mean, here we are on our specific Windows XP host environment with 3 different environments. I'm just clicking all 3 now to start up, and I have Windows Millennium, Windows 98, and Windows 2000. Pick your fancy, whatever one you want, and I can use this whenever I want and test out all the different applications, older software, retro hardware, legacy stuff. I can do that in these environments. And I think it gives you absolute control and gives you the ability to expand your knowledge and have some fun with some older stuff, or even with the newer applications today, as I mentioned with Oracle and VMware, you're able to go in and be able to utilize newer applications and things like that. And yeah, have a lot of fun with it. So again, that's what this is all about, just having a lot of fun. And that's what this channel is about, just being able to explore all this old software, especially when the fact that I had a sealed new old stock copy of Virtual PC and really wanted to walk through this together on the channel. All right, well, that said, let's go ahead and get this all cleaned up and get ready for our outro. And here we are at the end of the video testing out this brand new old stock copy of Microsoft Virtual PC 2004. And I'm telling you, it was absolutely exciting being able to go through this and relive a lot of this nostalgia, installing Windows 98, Windows Millennium Edition, I know everyone's favorite operating system, Windows 2000, etc. I mean, like I said, we're running Windows XP as the host on one piece of hardware, running multiple operating systems at the same time. And again, there's so many different use cases in terms of testing, whether it's older software that you might have, legacy hardware you want to test, things like that, or you just want to go down memory lane and be able to explore the operating systems and have a lot of fun. For me, I didn't really have this back in the day. I used real hardware is what I had used, and I still do that today. But again, this is very convenient. You saw how we're able to manipulate the different operating systems, pause it, restart it, move on to different things, and it gives you a lot of power as the end user to be able to do that. However, like I said, if you're trying to get into the retro community, this is a perfect way of doing it even today using VMware or using VirtualBox and things like that, Oracle VirtualBox. It gives you those options where you can get down this road. There's multiple tutorials on YouTube. There's multiple documents online. We live in the digital age of technology today, but sometimes it's nice to be able to go back in time and feel a little nostalgic for some of the operating systems that got us to where we are today. That said, if you liked today's video, please give it a thumbs up. If you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button. Change the notification button to all. You'll be notified of new content such as this. Please leave a comment down below. Did you own Virtual PC 2004 or any variation thereof? Let me know down in the comments. Let me know how you used it and let me know what your opinions were. And do you use virtual machines today? Again, let me know down in the comments. I love your interaction on the channel. I respond to absolutely every comment. Always making new content. We'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.